Hi, I'm Emma, and this is a story about family betrayal, survival, and unexpected triumph. When people ask me about my parents, I usually smile and change the subject. But today, I'm ready to share how they taught me the hardest lesson of my life, that sometimes losing everything is the key to finding your true worth. Growing up in our family's sprawling Victorian house in Boston, I was always the responsible one. While my younger brother Marcus lived the life of a golden child, I worked part-time jobs through college and saved every penny I could. Our parents, David and Patricia Thompson, made it clear early on that Marcus was their pride and joy, the son who would carry on the family name and make them proud. I didn't mind the favoritism much, I was used to it. I focused on building my career in pharmaceutical research, slowly climbing the corporate ladder while maintaining a modest lifestyle. By 30, I had saved $65,000. Money I had planned to use for my own future, maybe start my own research company someday. Then came the announcement that would change everything. Marcus was getting married to Sophia, the daughter of a prominent local businessman. Our parents were ecstatic, already planning what they called the wedding of the century. One evening during a family dinner, my mother cleared her throat meaningfully. "Emma, dear, we need to discuss something important." I looked up from my plate, noticing the familiar expression she wore when she was about to demand something unreasonable. Marcus and Sophia sat across from me, both looking uncomfortable. "The wedding venue Marcus and Sophia want is quite exclusive," my father began, his tone businesslike. "And with all the arrangements, the flowers, the gourmet catering, the entertainment, well, we're looking at significant expenses." My mother jumped in. "We've been looking at our finances, and we think it's time you contributed to the family. After all, you're the one with all those savings just sitting in the bank." I felt my stomach drop. "What exactly are you asking?" "We need $65,000 for the wedding," my father stated bluntly. "You'll give us your savings. It's the least you can do for your brother's happiness." The room spun slightly. That's all my savings," I protested. "I've been saving that money for years." Marcus at least had the decency to look embarrassed, but Sophia's face showed only entitlement. "Emma, don't you want us to have the perfect wedding?" she asked sweetly. "Besides, what else would you use it for? It's not like you're getting married anytime soon." That stung. At 30, I was single, having focused on my career rather than dating. My mother never failed to remind me that I was wasting my youth on work. "I can't give you all my savings," I said firmly. "I'd be happy to contribute something reasonable." "But—" "Reasonable?" My mother scoffed. "After everything we've done for you, we gave you a home, an education, a life of privilege. Now it's time to repay that debt." My father's face hardened. "Emma, this isn't a request. Either you help this family or you're no longer part of it. Think carefully about your next words." I looked at Marcus, silently pleading for support, but he avoided my gaze. My parents waited, their expressions a mix of expectation and threat. In that moment, I realized I had no choice, not if I wanted to keep my family. The next day, I transferred the money, my entire life savings gone in seconds. My mother hugged me, whispering, "See, that wasn't so hard. Now you're finally being a good daughter." The wedding was exactly as extravagant as they planned. I watched from a back table as my savings were literally eaten, drunk, and danced away. The flowers alone cost more than my annual rent. Sophia got her dream wedding. Marcus got his perfect day, and my parents got to show off to Boston's elite. I told myself it was worth it to keep the peace, to maintain my family relationships. I could always save more money, right? But life had other plans. 2 months after the wedding, I started experiencing severe fatigue and unexplained bruising. At first, I ignored it, throwing myself into work to rebuild my savings. But when I nearly collapsed during a presentation, I knew something was seriously wrong. The doctor's words hit me like a sledgehammer. "Miss Thompson, I'm sorry, but you have a rare form of leukemia. We need to start treatment immediately." My world shattered. The treatment would be expensive, and thanks to the wedding, my savings were gone. I needed my family more than ever. That evening, with shaking hands, I drove to my parents' house to tell them the news. I found them in the living room, planning Marcus and Sophia's housewarming party. My mother's smile faded when she saw my face. "Mom, Dad, I need to tell you something," I began, my voice trembling. "I'm sick. It's cancer." The silence that followed was deafening. Then my mother spoke, her voice cold. What do you expect us to do about it? I stared at her in disbelief. I need help. The treatment costs. No, my father interrupted sharply. We just spent a fortune on your brother's wedding. We can't afford any more expenses. But I gave you my savings. I protested, tears welling up. I have nothing left for treatment. I could die. My mother stood up, straightening her designer blouse. This is exactly like you, Emma. Always being dramatic, always needing attention. First, you complained about helping with the wedding. And now this. I'm not lying. Look at the medical reports. I pulled the papers from my bag, but my father waved them away. Even if it's true, he said coldly, we can't have a sick person in this house. What would people think? How would it affect Marcus's new marriage? No, you need to leave. Leave. I whispered. You're kicking me out because I'm sick. Don't make this harder than it needs to be, my mother said, not meeting my eyes. You're a burden now, Emma. We can't have that in this family. I looked around the room where I'd grown up, at the family photos on the walls, most featuring Marcus, of course. My whole life, I tried to be the perfect daughter, and this was my reward. Get out, my father ordered. And don't come back until you're better. If you get better. Somehow, I made it to my car before breaking down completely. Through my tears, I watched the lights go out in my childhood home, one by one, until only darkness remained. I had no savings, no family support, and a life-threatening illness. But as I drove away that night, something inside me changed. If I was going to survive, I would have to do it on my own terms. What I didn't know then was that this devastating moment would lead to the most incredible transformation of my life. I spent that night in my car, parked outside my small apartment, too exhausted to even make it upstairs. As the sun rose, I made a decision. I wouldn't let this destroy me. I had my research experience, my knowledge, and most importantly, my determination. First, I reached out to Dr. Williams, my mentor from graduate school. When I told him my situation, he was horrified. Emma, the research project you're working on, it's related to your type of leukemia, isn't it? He was right. For the past year, I've been part of a team developing a new treatment protocol for rare blood cancers. The irony wasn't lost on me. Come to my lab, he said firmly. We'll enroll you in a clinical trial. The treatment will be covered. That conversation changed everything. Not only will I receive cutting-edge treatment, but I could also continue my research, now with a deeply personal understanding of the patient experience. During my treatment, I discovered something crucial in our research data. Late one night, reviewing patient responses while hooked up to my own IV, I noticed a pattern no one else had seen. My unique position as both researcher and patient gave me insights that would have been impossible otherwise. I wrote a paper about my findings, working between treatments and despite the exhaustion. When it was published in a leading medical journal, the response was overwhelming. Pharmaceutical companies started calling. Investors wanted meetings. One morning, 6 months after my parents kicked me out, I was invited to speak at a major medical conference. Standing on that stage, still bald from chemotherapy but stronger than ever, I presented my research. The room was packed, and in the front row sat Marcus and Sophia. I hadn't invited them. They were there representing their father-in-law's investment firm. Their faces when they recognized me were priceless. I could see them frantically texting during my speech. Later that day, my phone exploded with messages. My mother's voicemail was hysterical. Emma, darling, we just heard you're some sort of medical genius now. Why didn't you tell us? We've been so worried. My father's message was more direct. Your mother and I would like to discuss investment opportunities in your research. Call us immediately. I didn't call back. Instead, I focused on building something meaningful. I started my own biotech company developing treatments for rare cancers. We hired other patients as consultants, ensuring their voices were heard in the research process. Within a year, we secured $50 million in funding. The day my company made headlines for a breakthrough treatment, my parents showed up at my office. They looked older, somehow smaller than I remembered. We're sorry, my mother said, tears in her eyes. We were horrible parents. Please forgive us. I looked at them, really looked at them, and felt nothing but pity. You kicked me out when I was dying, I said quietly. No amount of money can fix that. We can make it up to you, my father pleaded. We're still family. I shook my head. No, we're not. Family doesn't abandon family. Please leave. As security escorted them out, I turned back to my work. On my desk sat a photo of my research team, my real family now. We just received approval for a treatment that would save thousands of lives. Today, my company is valued at over $300 million. Marcus and Sophia's marriage didn't last. Apparently, spending all your money on a wedding doesn't guarantee happiness. I heard they moved to a small apartment in the suburbs. Sometimes, young researchers ask me how I succeeded despite everything. I tell them that success isn't about having a safety net. It's about finding strength in your darkest moments. That $65,000 my parents took. It bought them a lavish party. But it also gave me something priceless. The push I needed to become who I was meant to be. Last week, I opened a cancer treatment center that provides free care to patients whose families have abandoned them. The sign above the door reads, "No one fights alone." My illness is in remission now, but I carry the lessons with me. Sometimes those who should love you the most will let you down. But that doesn't determine your worth. Your value isn't in your bank account or your family name. It's in your resilience, your compassion, and your ability to turn pain into purpose. And that's something no one can take from you.